Awesome, guys. Hey, thank you so much for joining us here at Genesis Ministries. We are here with Mike Martin. My name's Casey Cook. Both of us came through this program at different times, and we just want to express a little bit of our story to you guys, especially on Mike's side, about how God moved in his life, kind of just from the beginning all the way what brought him here and what God's been doing in his life since then. I know he has an awesome testimony, so I'm excited for Mike to be here with us today. So, Mike, kind of just introduce yourself and who you are and kind of where it all started.
So my name is Michael Martin. I'm 42 years old. I used methamphetamines and heroin. That was my drug of choice when I came into the program in 2017. It was basically just to anesthetize pain in my life. I had pain from some things that happened in my childhood. And, I never put the two and two together. But, we run from stuff and we stuff everything. And we try to fill that void in our life with women and girls and drugs. And Dad wasn't in the picture. My mom was a single mom. She worked 2 jobs. She was a good mama. Seeing some of the damage that was happening in my family and just some of the ways that people were being treated by him, and it just brought a lot of fear into my heart. And I made these vows as a child that when I grow up and I have people depending on me, I'll never treat them like that. And then it's like you fast forward like 30 years, and here you are looking in a mirror and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I know you said when you were younger, like kind of Dad wasn't really in the picture, and your grandpa kind of had to step in and kind of take that role. Do you remember kind of what age that started happening for you, that you kind of remember, hey, Dad's not in the picture, Grandpa's kind of stepping in, and what kind of did that feel like for you?
Well, the first time that I realized like something was off with my life was, I think I was in like kindergarten. My mom would take me to school and drop me off, or I would ride the bus. And then I would see other kids getting dropped off or picked up by both sets of parents, And then there was this one time, like in the bathroom, where I saw these kids and they were like about to fight. And one kid was like, I'll beat you up, The other kid was like, I'll call my dad. And the other one was like, well, I'll get my dad to beat your dad up.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I wonder where my dad is.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if my dad would fight for me.
Yeah.
And it was like the enemy came in right then, and I knew something was off, and I wondered if it was my own fault.
Yeah. And did you grow up like in church, or was God presented to you at all when you were a child?
Absolutely. So my grandfather, my grandmother and grandfather were married, and my grandma used to, keep me a lot of the time, because sometimes my grandfather would be out on these benders for days at a time, and my grandmother would keep me while my mom was working, and she would introduce me to like Bible stories and stuff, whether it was like Samson, or if it was like David and Goliath, or Abraham. And I had some word being presented to me. And so later on in life, when I got into the trap house and, I was like down to the rock bottom, or just, I used to sit in dope houses, man, just high as a kite for like 5-6 days straight.
Yeah.
And look around and be like, did y'all ever think that y'all are created for more than this?
Yeah. God was speaking like in little ways.
Yeah, and it was because like there was an implanted word in me that I knew that there was an abundant life available, but I just not accessed it yet.
And do you remember kind of like growing up and really obviously you went through some stuff as a child, and speaking about that, kind of what age were you introduced to drugs or alcohol?
I think when I was about 6 years old, I was at a family member's house and I uncovered some porn magazines, and they were like hardcore porn magazines, and I just remember seeing these images and feeling like this dopamine rush. Like I didn't know what it was at the time, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be looking at it, and I knew if I got caught, I was going to be in big trouble. But these were like hardcore images, and I mean, while I'm sitting here talking, I can see the one still to this day, you know. And I remember just like being drawn to that, and then, you know, putting it back up, learning out of there, and then like it just sitting inside of me. And then, you know, seeing if anybody was around to run back in there and check it again and make sure what I saw.
Yeah.
You know? But so that was that. And then, you know, it was the typical thing when you get to be 13, 14 years old, you start smoking cigarettes because all your friends are doing it. And for me, you know, it was the 90s, you know, and it was like every movie star that you saw was smoking cigarettes and drinking. And, you know, it's just, as far as God goes during that time in my life, like the preteen and teenager years, I was so far removed from that.
Yeah.
But, you know, later on in life, that the word started to come up in me in times where, you know, where it was all looked like it was lost, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, so finishing school. I mean, obviously you got through school, right?
Yeah.
And then what did that look like afterwards? Obviously, I'm guessing that it kind of started going more south, and maybe more and more drugs, different drugs, experimenting. Can you kind of walk us through what that process was like to kind of get you to where, hey, now I'm kind of stuck in this place of addiction, and how did I get here? Like, kind of walk us through that and what that looked like.
So I'll rewind the tape just a little bit because my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer when I was around 10 years old, 9 years old. My dad all of a sudden called out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, I'm in town, do you want to hang out?" And you know, like, and so like, you know, the major male influence in my life, he's gone, and now the one who the spot was basically created for, comes back in, and of course I'm like, absolutely I want to hang out. Like, you know, there was no like, wait, where have you been? Like, why haven't you been around? Like, I just wanted my dad.
Yeah, just
and like, I just wanted my dad. And he came back into my life. We started to get close. He lived in California. I went to go visit him several times. It was just awesome. And but within about a year and a half of him coming back into my life, he got diagnosed with cancer. And when I was 17, he died. And so both the scenarios of walking with them through treatment and their battle with cancer, you know, I was under this notion that like I was helping them because, you know, my grandfather, I would administer medication to him, and, you know, I was always praying and hoping that he was going to get better. And then my dad, too, I would drive him back and forth to appointments and stuff, you know, and I'm thinking, okay, this time my efforts on trying to fix this situation is going to pan out, you know. And I remember when he died, though, man, part of me died with him, you know.
That's hard.
And I really became a taker at that point, and I put up this defense mechanism that said, like, you know, no love, no trust. Like, I'm not going to allow anybody to play on my emotions like that ever again, you know. Yeah. And so I really shut down. When I was 26 years old, my son was born, and
who's taller than me, by the way, now?
he's 16.
At 16.
Yeah, he's 16 now. But my son was born, and me and his mom, we had been intimate for about 2 months. She was actually my dope dealer, and she becomes pregnant, and we decide, like, okay, we're gonna try to make this work, you know. And obviously things didn't work out between her and I mean, she did the best she could to stay off of drugs for that 9 months, and, you know, I tried to make sure she didn't stay off drugs, or she did stay off drugs, but I didn't stay off drugs. And so there was a lot of stuff there. But she ended up leaving me, and I felt like, you know, the family was broken up. Then we went to court and all, you know, child support, you know, you're not allowed to see this boy, you know. It's just a lot. There's too much to go into. One time he got sent to foster care because the house got raided, all this stuff. But somewhere in there, I started to believe this lie that you're actually doing more damage to this boy and that you're actually like a spiritual leech on this whole situation. So you need to take your hands as far away from this thing as you can go. And so I never stopped being in contact with my son, but there was just some scenarios and stuff that happened, and it just caused me to like lose hope and lose confidence in some of the purposes that I have been created for. And I just, you know, one thing led to another, and before you know it, you're jumped out, shooting up dope, taking a pound of meth back and forth from Atlanta, you know, just for the adrenaline rush. And it's like, I just called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm done.
And that night I walked out on the porch of my mom's house, and it was cold and it was a February night, you know, and I just looked out at the stars. Like, I had remembered some of those Bible stories that my grandma told me, you know.
Those seeds.
Yeah. And I remembered a story about a man named Abraham, you know, who had an encounter with God while he was looking out in the stars. And I said, if you're out there and you can see me right now, I know I'm not as important as that guy in the Bible, but I could really use your help right about now. And nothing happened. But nothing happened physically, but things started to happen inside of me. Because the miracle that really started to happen was I was able to say yes to strange and new things. And then about a week later, found myself sitting in Eli's office, and you know, he just looked at me and he said, Mr. Martin, what's going on with you? And I, you know, after years of justifying and jumping down people's throat if they got too close to, you know, the real mic, and you know, the lies and the rationalizations. He said, what's going on with you, Mr. Martin? And I just looked at him and I said, I'm just a junkie with no purpose. And that was probably like the truest thing I had said in probably 5 years. And it was like, in that moment, it was like God stepped into the picture.
Yeah.
And then Eli came and put his arm on me, and he said, that's okay, brother, because Jesus has got a new identity for you, and you'll find purpose in that. And I remember just thinking, really? Really? Like, and this flame began to burn inside of me, and, you know, I had an encounter with the Lord, like, within these walls, you know. This became like a meeting place between me and God, you know. I sat in here, right down there, and like I knew my life was a train wreck, and I had no idea how to fix myself. And I would just get down on my knees in the morning. It would be pitch black in here, and I would just weep. And I said, Lord, I don't know. All I know is I'm here. Yeah. Like, I'm here, just do something. Please fix me. I came in here as an absolute piece of trash father. You know, I knew my son needed me, but I had just, you know, I had made a mess of everything. And one of the things that I would pray for just every single day, and I had everybody in here praying for, was that God would restore my relationship with my son. And I found the scripture, I think it's in Malachi, and it says, God will restore the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children's hearts to the father. And I really began to like put my life, the entire weight of every bit of faith I could on that verse. And I found out that like his promises are true. And if he said it, and you take what was already spoken and you begin to speak it, and you begin to be, it's crazy what can happen, because the Bible says that you will decree a thing and it will become established. And So long story short, I got out of here. Ashton was at his mom's house. She was on drugs too. I didn't like what I saw over there, and one day I got this overwhelming gift of faith that came over me when I was going over there to drop him off. And I just saw what was happening over there. There was darkness. There was demonic activity going there. I could see the gates of hell that were poised against my child. And I knew that God had cleaned me up for such a time as this. And one day, just this audacity came up in me, and I said, you know what? You're never going back over there. I don't care about the order that's in place. I don't care if they call the cops. I don't care about anything. I'm your dad, and I'm going to take authority over this situation right now. And he goes, really? You know, he's like 10 years old at the time. And I said, let's go over there. Let's get your stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know where we're going to live. You know, I had acquired like $24,000 worth of arrears for not paying child support while I was in my addiction. Well, I had got put on this court. It's like the story of Joseph. Joseph goes into prison, but he starts getting all these connections, like while he's like getting punished.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he keeps a good attitude. So I'm getting punished. I'm going into this child support accountability court, and I get connected with this attorney who actually does like pro bono work.
Oh, cool.
And so like I get this court case to go in front of a judge, and in 2021, I got full custody of Ashton. And it came like full circle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, it was a drag out. I mean, it was a drag. It was a fight. It was just a lot. I mean, but God is good. God was faithful.
Yeah.
And what was crazy was I was paying her money, and she was taking the money and doing drugs, you know. And about 2 weeks before the court case, there's this verse in Isaiah that says, I will no longer give your grain as food for your enemies, and the grapes that you toil for as wine for your enemies. Instead, you will eat the food that you harvest and drink the wine that you toil for in my courts, and you will praise my name. And so, so I get this verse, and it's like becomes like this rhema word for me. Like I'm not gonna be paying her anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be taking all this money and giving it to her, because I know it's keeping her like one belt strap away from like hitting rock bottom.
Yeah, you start declaring it.
Yeah, and so I started to speak this word over the situation. These are my grapes. This is my grain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is
But
my
you have to.
And then all of a sudden my attorney calls and she's like, You ready for court? We got court on Monday. And we got on that court case, man, and I walked, it was on a Zoom call, and the judge asked, we were on it for 5 minutes, and the judge flipped the whole thing on its head and said, you got custody. They wiped out $10,000 of arrears. They just adjudicated the whole case and like flipped it all in my favor. And it was all God. Yeah.
And it's like just hearing like your story even about like you and your son, like I know that you can relate, like just imagining how Jesus is with us, and like how when you were in and when I was in and we're all in like that moment of just being lost, like God never left us. The same way we're like, you don't leave, like you never left your son, like and you're like, whatever I need to do, like that's how God looks at us. And it's hard to understand until you encounter God, that kind of vision that God has for us. But like when you're just speaking about that, I'm like, I just kept imagining like that's what Jesus does for us. Like what you did for your son, it's so powerful, and like the effects of that are going to be like generational changing, right? And you put like a stake in the ground for your family, and like no matter what it is, and that's how Jesus said, whatever it costs, like I'm here for my kids.
Yeah.
And the same way you did, and that's so powerful to hear. Like I love hearing that. And so it gets flipped on its head, and now in 2021 you have full custody of your son. And
so I mean, all along the way there's just victories acquired, you know what I mean? And I'm not here to like try and like puff myself up or tell you about all this stuff like to be some trophy. If I say anything about my victories, I can tell you right now, I'm like David. because he said, it was the God of angel armies who delivered me, who delivered that lion, that bear, that Philistine, and that palace into my account. And so I'm still waiting on the palace.
Yeah, I think we all
killed a couple giants.
I know, right? Yeah.
We killed a couple giants.
Yeah.
But so just in May, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in theology from Bible College. I was in there for 4 years, and that's surreal. That's insane, because just one thing that God really put on my heart while I was here in the program was this: commit to stuff. Commit to stuff and complete your commitment. And so whether it was this program, whether it was seeing my drug and alcohol courts all the way out, whether it was the parental accountability court, whether it was the bachelor's degree, it was just commit to stuff and complete the commitment. And so that's what I've been doing.
I mean, you're thinking back, 2016 you came in here, so you're thinking back 2015, early 2016 when that was. We're in 2023. I mean, if you look back, like how surreal, like, hey, I have custody of my son. Like, I'm following God. I'm a college graduate.
Yeah.
Like, I have my own business. I mean, these things that God has done, and for us it may seem like that's a short amount of time in comparison. And the verse is true, like God will restore those years at the end of the soul. Like you were right there where you should be. God has you in the exact spot where He wants you. Your business is right where it needs to be. And it's so encouraging to hear, because a lot of times it's like, where is the fruit? I'm harvesting. I'm in the fields. I'm doing these things.
Yes.
God, like, where is the fruit? And sometimes we look back and we're like, whoa, like, I'm experiencing the fruit right now. Like, this is crazy. And you think, like, I would rather, and I'm sure you can relate, I would rather have my worst day today than my worst day then, right? And it's like, because my worst day then can kill me. My worst day now is I'm on my knees in front of God asking for help. You know what I mean? And so the life change, and you can see it. You can just physically see it in people that God is in their life and He's moving. And so if you had like any last encouraging words to people out there, because you know as well as I know, like, this world is still the world, and addiction is still out there, and the enemy is still like prowling on people and destroying families. There's somebody out there that's probably going to watch this that's struggling. Like, what is something just encouraging that you can give them to kind of take that step, that faith of, hey, I need to get help?
Yeah. So I mean, it comes down to like one decision, and that decision is making a move for Christ. I mean, and it's just saying yes. Right now, the reason that Casey is successful and that I'm successful in this thing is that every day I wake up, I just say yes to the God before He even asks me anything. It's just this perpetual yes, because I know that His way is higher, and His way is smarter, and His way is wiser than Mike's way. And so just say yes to the Lord. Just say, and when you say yes to Jesus, when you literally ask Him into your heart, He will begin to move on you and allow you to say yes to new things, to strange things, to hard things, to things that have you so shook out of your comfort zone that you don't know what's going to happen. You know? And so that's it. And just say yes. Just say yes to treatment. Say yes to Jesus. Say yes to everything that He has for you.
Mike, thank you so much again, man. This has been awesome. And once again, guys, we're here at Genesis Ministries over on Hawkins Store Road. Reach out to us if you need anything. Thank you so much for joining us today.